All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. So welcome to your user group Pakistan Dynamics 365 and Power Platform community. Uh, we are happy to have you again, and I would like to thank you for all the volunteers who have been working so hard days and nights to build this community in Pakistan, and we have achieved so much success in building this community. So thank you so much for all the volunteers and organizers who have been helping out to build this community with me. And special thanks to all the speakers, and not to mention today's speakers, Auntie. And thank you so much for giving us this opportunity and coming onto this platform. And with this one, I want to really thank all the speakers who have given their time, all the MVPs, people from Microsoft who come forward and give sessions on this particular Pakistan Cloud Power Platform event. And this has built the, the baseline or platform for the Pakistan. So thank you so much. And no event can be successful without any attendees. So I would like to thank all the attendees who are here, who have joined us today. This is just the platform which we are providing to learn and share. So feel free to ask any questions at the end of the session today so that we can also grow together. So that's the whole idea of this particular user group, Pakistan user group, is let's grow together. With this one, I just quickly wanted to run through what is this user group. So this is a place like so many other user groups. This is a place where you can come forward and you can present about Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, but it's not limited to that one. If you have any question from Microsoft Azure ecosystem, please come forward and share. It's a place where we are aiming to get people come closer to each other. Due to all these pandemic situations, everything is running online and virtual. So it's a good opportunity for everyone to come closer and build a strong community. Uh, as I said, you can everyone is welcomed, not locals, not only for Pakistan or India. Like we got speaker from Finland today, so everyone is welcome. Now, as you also mentioned about our aim is to create a community within a Pakistan, and definitely we need a help from broader audience, bigger audience around the world, and we have been so much blessed with the people like Auntie. Andre and so many MVPs of people from Microsoft, Sunil Garg, they have joined us and present on Pakistan user group. So it's going really well. So thank you so much. So that's all about this particular user group. Uh, Very easy way. You just scan these barcodes and you will be the part of this group. So we are only running this group only on LinkedIn, doing all the sessions, scheduled sessions on Meetup, and all the sessions are recorded and will be uploaded to the dedicated YouTube channel for Pakistan user group. Uh, Upcoming session is it's too exciting. We are also getting another MVP, Alex Meyer. He will be talking about finance and operation security tips, tricks, and tools. So please do register, scan just this barcode, and it will take you directly to the registration link. Just it's very straightforward. Couple of clicks and you will be registered. It's happening on 24th of June, which is 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. of Australian time, 7 a.m. of Central time, and from when we talk about Pakistan time, so it's 5 p.m. in Pakistan at that time. So I have mentioned all the timings there. With this one, I would like to hand over our today's speaker, Ante, and he's going to talk about change notifications with GAP API. So over to you, Ante. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me in your user group too, and allowing me to speak on change notifications. Uh, the thing that I think is, if we look at some of the good things in the pandemic, the good thing is that I think learning is done on a broader level than it is, before the pandemic, in the sense that, speaking in different user groups was just something that for some reason I didn't really see happening that much. Now it could be just me, but that was my experience that user groups were pre-pandemic, they were very like local, but I
Yes.
think that with the pandemic, the doors have sort of opened around the world in the sense that people are really like talking in different places and in places that they probably would not have talked at
Yes.
before the pandemic. So I think that's a good thing. So it's fantastic to be able to share some of these things with all of you. So let me share my screen and get started with the presentation. I'll try to keep this in, like we talked, like in about 40-ish or so minutes. It's actually it's a very, very broad topic. Uh, and I could probably easily go on for like an hour and a half uh, on it. There's a lot of stuff there, and you'll kind of realize that when we get started with all the demos and stuff. If anyone has any questions, let's try to keep this. Let me just move my Teams to another window. Let's try to keep this interactive. So if anyone has any questions, just feel free to interrupt me and ask away. I'll try to monitor the chat. Let's see if I can advance in the slides. Yes, I can. So I'll try to look at the chat, but if anyone has any questions, just unmute and ask away. This is a very information-packed session with sort of, I'd say, knowledge-wise, the slide parts that I'm going to talk about are fairly like, I'd say, high-level stuff, so that you get an understanding of what are change notifications, what is Graph API, and then when we move on from the slides to the actual demo, which is fairly, I'd say substantial, that goes forward pretty fast, and it is a very advanced deep dive. At least that's how I see it. So high level stuff first on the slides, then advanced deep dive at the end during the demo. So specifically in the demo, try to do your best to keep up. It goes forward pretty fast because we're talking about workflows and automation. So things move at a fast pace. So it might be maybe a bit hard to keep up, but hopefully you can. So with that, the topic is change notifications in general and how we can leverage those to sync bookings between Dynamics and Outlook. Basically, just a few words about me. My name is Antti. I come from Finland. I'm one of the founders at Forward Forever. We're a consultancy of 9 people, just 2 years old now. And I'm a BizApps MVP. My focus has really always been, I guess I could say like CRM. I'm a CRM guy at heart, right? And my kind of specialty niche has always been, those project management tools from Microsoft. So I actually primarily work, even though my title and what I primarily do is Power Platform advisory for customers. I work with project operations a lot and the project management tools like what used to be PSA, what's now project operations, and what's project for the web. So that's kind of my specialty niche. Those are topics that I love talking about, blogging about, and so on. And in some sense, this topic is related to those niche specialties of mine as well. And you'll kind of get the idea as we move forward in the topic. But with that, let's discuss the agenda for today and what are some of the things that we're going to cover. So first off, we're going to look at just requirements. What are some of the requirements that we have that we're trying to solve in the scenario that we're talking about. So we're going to cover the requirements sort of after this slide. So what's the business case? What are we trying to accomplish? And then we'll talk a bit about what the Graph API, what Microsoft Graph API is, and how we can use that. And then, with Graph API, what are those change notifications? What do they do? How can we use them? And what are the different tools to using them? And then I'm going to cover some lessons learned actually before I hit the demo so that I don't have to revisit the slide deck. And after these, we'll see how we'll see in a demo how change notifications actually work. So what I do want to emphasize is what I am going to show you is it's a concept. It's not a framework or it's not a finished product. It probably has some bugs, uh, but it's it is a concept. So it's something that you can, if you want to, you can take and refine and make it better or tweak it or make it completely different. The idea is just to have a concept in place to highlight some options that we have for establishing a two-way sync of bookings on this platform. So then let's cover our goals briefly. So what are our goals? So really, in a nutshell, our goal is to sync our bookings in Dynamics to Outlook, and then changes to those bookings in Outlook need to be synced back to Dynamics. So what's the deal here? Why is such a requirement? Well, I'm talking about the scenario that I'm gonna run through approaches it from a field service perspective. So imagine I'm a field technician, right? I'm a field technician and I've been booked to repair a customer's, it can be anything. Let's say a fridge, a customer's fridge has broken down and I've been scheduled to go on site to that customer's place and repair their fridge. Now, that's a very standard field service scenario, right? So I'm a technician, a scheduler books me, and then I arrive on scene. The thing here is that there's really out of the box these days, there's really nothing that allows us to accomplish this from Dynamics to Outlook. So there's this new concept of book syncing Outlook bookings to field service that just rolled out. So it's sort of there, but it's still not it's not 100% sort of robust. So out of the box, we don't have that feature of syncing bookings. We used to have it, but it's actually been gone for a couple of years due to platform issues. So that's one thing. And that's actually, there's really no magic there. We don't need change notifications for that. And that's something I've already covered about 2 years ago in previous blog posts. Uh, the idea here really is that, when I, as a field technician, am ready to go on site and the customer calls, maybe they're a frequent customer, they have my mobile number, and they call me and ask me, hey Antti, you know what, I'm running late, can we push this repair visit an hour in the future? And I'm like, all right, fine, let's push that an hour in the future. What do I, as a field technician, have to do? I would normally have to call my scheduler or message my scheduler, however I'd want to contact them, and let them know that booking has been, that's been updated. And how could I even have that responsibility and take on that responsibility of saying that booking is going to be changed if I don't have visibility into my events? So if I'm looking at my calendar and I'm seeing I don't have anything after this booking, I can easily push it forward. I can just tell the customer that's fine, I can come an hour later. I'll just drag and drop, the booking, change the date, the time of the booking on my mobile, and that then gets synced in Dynamics so that the scheduler sees that, hey, all right, so Anti's actually, he pushed the booking forward. He doesn't have any, other work to do, so he was able to push it forward. And these kind of scenarios, they're not possible out of the box, and they actually take I would say, considerable amount of effort to build. So that's in essence something that we're doing here today in that demo. And there are some caveats to this. One thing is we're only syncing bookings that originate from Dynamics, and the reason for that is, and picture this in your minds. If you're creating an event in Outlook, an event like we're on right now, if you create an event in Outlook into your calendar and you type in the name of the event, if you would be creating a net new booking in Outlook, how would you ever match that booking in Dynamics? Let's say you have a work order. How would you ever know the exact correct customer name an account, how would you match that? If you create an appointment and you punch in the name of the customer incorrectly or the number of the work order incorrectly, n- nothing would find that in Dynamics, right? So there's a challenge why we can't make net new bookings in Outlook. Now, theoretically, with the new relevant search in Power Automate, we could. I haven't tested that out, so that's sort of on my to-do list. But it's really hard to sync abstract stuff from Outlook to Dynamics. So that's why we're only looking at events that originate from Dynamics. So those are the goals and the requirements. If anyone has any questions, again, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask away. So let's look at the Microsoft Graph API. So what is the Graph API? Well, it's really, you could say that it's something that gives us access to Microsoft 365 services. That's actually it in a nutshell. So with Graph API, we're able to do, create, update, post, patch operations to different Microsoft 365 services, such as, Delve, Planner, SharePoint, even Business Central, Workplace Analytics, anything, that's Microsoft 365. We can access that with Graph API. So that's Graph in a nutshell. So how can we use Graph API then? Well, there's several different ways we can use it. The first one is, if you kind of want to get started with Graph API, it is super powerful. It is super powerful. If you have a Dynamics background, for example, and you've not played with the world of Office or Microsoft 365, I definitely encourage you to go and try Graph. It's just, it unlocks a whole different set of possibilities for you. It's in that sense, it's really amazing. At least for me, it's unlocked tons of additional possibilities, kind of to some extent learning it. So the ways we can use Graph API is, for example, the Graph Explorer. And that's really good. You can use that for your own profile and your own stuff, such as getting your profiles, your email, your manager, these kinds of things about you in your organization. So I would definitely encourage you to kind of play around with Graph Explorer, because that'll help you get started with what it is. Now, another way of using it is Postman. That's again more around testing, testing stuff. But it's a great tool for diagnostics. So you can't do everything in Graph Explorer, so you have to venture outside of that for some things. And Postman is really good for that. Postman is pretty universal in the sense that it's not we use that for Dynamics Web API as well. Now I can see I can see a question there in the chat from Rachit. Is there any subscription required to access enable? No, there is no subscription that's required to access or enable Graph API. That at least that I know of. Naturally, I've always used it with. You need to have a profile in your tenant, right? So. Uh, I'd say that you need an email address to access your email, but I don't think you need anything else than that for Graph. So then the third way of you're welcome. So then the third way of using Graph is naturally through the tools in which we actually build our logic in. So Power Automate, Logic Apps, Azure Functions are some of those examples. So in Power Automate, which is the focus of this presentation is in Power Automate, we have a HTTP action where we can choose our method, and then we choose a URI where we want to put what we want to what that we want to interact with. And in the picture that we see here, what we're doing is, I think we're doing a post against, we're doing a post for against the user's calendar in this example. So those are some of the tools that allow us to use Graph API. just as an example, some popular API requests, just taken from Microsoft's doc site. Get my profile, get my files, get my photo, get my notes, all these kinds of things. So, when you kind of start thinking about this, you can actually do a lot of cool stuff with this. You can pull things from your own profile from different locations, and put them into sort of like a separate bucket, if you like. So, lots of opportunities here. So now that we kind of understand what Graph API is, let's consider change notifications. So what is a change notification? Well, the technical term is that Microsoft Graph uses a webhook to deliver change notification to clients. But that's sort of, what does that mean? So the way I kind of translate it is, think of change notifications as a UPS driver. You order a package, and then UPS accepts delivery, and they deliver that package, and they ring your doorbell, and then when they ring your doorbell, pling plong, that's that change notification that delivers stuff to you. That's at least how I perceive it. That's my brain. I had a simple brain. That's how I like to perceive change notifications. So if we look at kind of just a few visuals, how can change notifications be used? So what we do is we first subscribe to a resource in the world of Microsoft 365. So we subscribe to a resource, like an Outlook event, for example. Then that subscription is accepted. And then when something happens, when we have that active subscription, when something happens, in this case, it's that new event that we create in Outlook. A change notification is received. So every time a new event in Outlook is created, when we have a subscription, we get a change notification. The change notification is then accepted, and then we run our custom logic and we do whatever we want, with based on that change notification. So we get information about that event through our change notification, and then we do, whatever we want to do. And that's something that I'm going to definitely show in the demo in just a few minutes. So examples of change notifications, we can react to Microsoft 365 group conversations. We can even react to Teams chat messages. We can set a Teams presence. Like I said, react to Outlook messages, react to Outlook events, lots and lots of possibilities. There is a track on Learn, Docs Learn on change notifications. I've actually not gone through that. That's also on my to-do list. But there is a course on change notifications on Docs. So I would suggest that you have a look at it. It actually might be worth checking. I'll definitely do that, because change notifications are not really. I don't think they're simplest to get started with, if at least coming from a dynamics background and a functional background. They weren't really the easiest to get started with, for at least for me. There are great articles and blog posts in the community about change notifications, which certainly have helped me a ton to kind of get the ball rolling and to get started with the change notifications. So before we hit the demo, I'm going to go through lessons learned, and this is sort of where we actually hit the hit the deep end of the pool. So the lessons learned slide that I have has some very advanced concepts, and I'm not going to talk through the concepts. So you just kind of, if you don't know them, don't worry. I'm not going to explain these concepts in more detail. So I think this is sort of from a presentation point of view and demo point of view, probably the most advanced slide or advanced section that I'm going to cover. So what are some of my findings that I've done? And I want to again discuss this right now, because otherwise I'd have to jump back to this slide after the demo, and that just would make the presentation more clumsy. So first off, even though I'm covering change notifications in the demo in Power Automate, this is definitely pro code approach. If you were doing this, if you're doing this in an implementation, use pro code tools. I don't think that I honestly don't think that Power Automate is the right tool to do a production implementation, but it's good for doing this example that I'm going to cover. Uh, it's great for a concept, a proof of concept, and sort of to play around with it to get an understanding and an awareness of what change notifications can do. So one of the reasons for pro code is we definitely want to leverage the event framework. We have no access to the event execution pipeline when we are using Power Automate, and that produces certain challenges. And I'm going to highlight those challenges as we move on. And another thing is throttling. Uh, that is a very that's the biggest, I'd say that's the biggest deal breaker possibly for if you're trying to do this on an enterprise scale. And the reason for that is uh, when we send a change notification, this is specific to the event resource, the calendar event resource that we're talking about, or Outlook event resource that we're talking about. When I send a change notification or do something that delivers that change notification, um, my flows run up to four times simultaneously concurrently, and that's just has to do with not bad logic, but it has to do with how the event resource is built. So it's actually built in a way that when I do a post and I create something, that that event resource goes and updates itself somehow internally, and that causes another that update causes another change notification to be fired off. So for a single booking in Dynamics, net new booking, I'm getting 4 change notifications. And if you have 2,000 field technicians, then you can do the math. Your flows are going to throttle right away. So you need to consider and factoring throttling. And again, throttling might be easier to control. It is I'd say it is a pro code approach. I think it's easier to control in something like Azure Functions than it is in Power Automate. And with that, multi-day bookings don't really work well. So again, this is a concept. So if you use this against, for example, project operations, and you book a resource on a project, what you're going to get is for, let's say you book someone for a year, what you're going to get is, depending on business closures and whatnot, you're going to get over 200 bookable resource booking records in Dynamics. So, good luck trying to sync those over to your Outlook and to keep those two things in sync. That's going to be really, really hard. So, multi-day bookings don't work great for this concept. And then there are some specific considerations for the resources itself. So the event resource. So resource data isn't supported, and one thing that we have to do is use open extensions instead of schema extensions, because schema extensions only support delegated permissions. Now you can use schema extensions, but I didn't really want to go through that custom connector and on that custom connector route to use delegated permissions. So I went with open extensions. Now, the challenge with there is open extensions don't support OData filtering. So again, an additional layer of logic needs to be put out in the solution that I've done because of that. And then there are some things with the event resource where post to the event resource sometimes just fails when open extensions are being used, and there's really nothing we can do about that. That's just a bug that just happens for some reason. So we have to take in that possible failure in our logic, and the nasty thing with that is the action fails, but it still succeeds in creating that event. So it's like it fails, but it doesn't, and it's mind blowing. It's just like it's been driving me crazy. It doesn't happen too often, but it does happen sometimes. So these kinds of things. These are the lessons learned in a nutshell. Why I'm saying, this is a concept. It's not really something that you might actually want to implement in enterprise. You might do this for a small company like 20 field technicians or 50 field technicians, where you don't have to worry about these things. But even with that, you want to go pro code on this one. So with that, if anyone has any questions at this point, please feel free to ask. If not, then I will just jump in the demo itself. So let's see, where are we? Let's cover change notifications first. So how do we subscribe to those change notifications? Well, the way I've built this is, let me hop over to my bookable resources in Dynamics. And let me just read a question in chat that Rachit asked. Is it used in conjunction with Dynamics 365 customer engagement or wider Dynamics products as well? Rachit, can you elaborate on the question just a bit? Do you mean using change notifications or what?
Yeah. So hi, Andy. So this is regarding like if we want to use it with Dynamics 365 finance and operations or project operations, can we use this platform of Graph APIs? Them?
Okay, yeah, good question. So Graph API is an access is a set of APIs for the world of Microsoft 365 only. So it doesn't have, I think it has some Business Central APIs in Graph, which I don't really understand why, but that's, that it's just said that in docs. But Dynamics has its own web APIs. But what you can do is, and what I'm doing here is I'm syncing my Outlook through Graph API so that it essentially talks to and with Dynamics. I hope that answered your question. But I mean, in
Yeah.
theory, we can use this concept that I'm displaying or that I'm going to go through. You could use this with Business Central or F&O as well. If you'd find a similar sort of,
Mhm.
let's say, concept of a resource in F&O.
Cool. Thanks, Andy. Thanks.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on John Doe first, and what we're going to do is we're going to subscribe to change notifications for John Doe, so that when John Doe is booked, he will get a change notification delivered, and his bookings are going to be synced. So the way we do this is what I've created here is I've created a simple a simple option set, a simple choice field, allow or don't allow sync with Exchange, and that essentially means that allow change notifications. I've just named it sync with Exchange, but it's just the meaning is subscribe to change notifications. And this is one of the this is actually the first thing where we're sort of going to hit the pro code approach and the concept of an event framework. I can just smash allowed, not allowed, and save the record multiple times without without any restrictions. And what would happen in the background is, I'd be subscribed, unsubscribed, change notifications every time I sort of change this value and save the form. So what I would actually, if I was doing an actual implementation, what I would want to do here is I would want to have this executed so that I can't change this field before the operation has run, right? That so that I can't smash this button and change the value consistently and mess up the logic in the background. So this is one of those first sort of like why I would say that you want to do this pro code. So now that I changed John Doe's sync with Exchange to allowed, let's actually see what happens in one of the flows. So subscribe and unsubscribe to change notifications. So what this flow does is it gets naturally some of the basic stuff, information about the user. Then it checks whether we're selecting sync with Exchange or not syncing with Exchange. So now that we're saying sync with Exchange, it's what it's going to do is it's going to actually get change subscriptions for John Doe. And this is really the first part where this theoretically might go wrong. So if you would have multiple subscriptions to change notifications, because you can have several to the same resource, then naturally this would lead to the logic that I'm going to demo next running several times. So you need to make sure that that a resource only has a single subscription to change notifications. And when we've gotten the subscription, what we're going to do is we're actually going to look if a subscription already exists. Since it doesn't, what we're going to do is we're going to create a subscription for John Doe. And this is actually very straightforward to this point. The thing is, it's not like this isn't all. Right? You have to do something else to actually get that subscription going. So what we need is a validation. So when we subscribe to change notifications, not only do we, push out the request to subscribe, we actually have to do a validation. So we have to respond with a validation token, which is, then it essentially creates that subscription. So this is that subscribe and accept thing that I showed on one of those slides. So you subscribe, then that subscription is accepted. This is that validation and acceptance part for that subscription. But in a nutshell, that's it. Now we're now subscribed to change notifications. There is one additional consideration that we need to do. Subscriptions expire in just under 4 days. So we need to keep these subscriptions alive. That means that we have to have recurring logic that runs every, I think I've set mine to run every 3 days or something, that updates every single subscription that we have available. So that way, the subscriptions don't expire. Otherwise, this concept would naturally be useless. So that's one gotcha that you kind of have to take into consideration. But with that, what we've now kind of seen is how do those change notifications actually created. So what I'm going to do next is I will create a booking in Dynamics, and let's see how that gets carried over to Outlook. And let me just actually check the date for which I want to create it. I want to create it for Monday. So we can close John Doe's resource card, and then I'm going to hop over on a work order, and then I'm going to create a new booking. And let's just call it booking 1. And I will create it for Monday for 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I am the resource, and the booking status is scheduled, and we can now create it. If you look here, we can see a couple of additional columns that are custom columns that I've created. And once we have that booking created, we'll visit the booking record, and we'll see these populated, and I'll kind of explain what these mean at that point. So for now, let's save and close. And then we can look at a flow that creates that booking in Outlook. So we have a flow that syncs bookable resource bookings to Outlook. Now, if that post to the Outlook resource fails, it's going to fail at this point. So let's see how it goes. It hasn't failed in a demo yet, and it says it's ran successfully, but if we don't get the event in my calendar, then it's failed. So let's actually check that first before we dissect the flow. All right, we have it there. That's good. So what the nope, that's the wrong flow. Let's go over to the booking flow. Here we go. So what this flow does, now that I created a booking in Dynamics, what this flow does is, first off, it checks whether the operation that I did was for an update or for a create. So I'm checking the SDK message from the trigger to determine whether I've updated a record or whether I've created a record. I want to do that because I wanted to create everything in this same flow. And actually, I could have 2 different flows for this as well. So what happens is, when a new booking is created, basic information about that booking and work order and that resource are fetched. And then what we're doing is we're creating an event using Microsoft Graph in my Outlook calendar. And here we are using a concept of open extensions, and you can see that right here. So what is that open extension? So that open extension is essentially a means of, it's actually exactly what it sounds like. It's an extension of the event resource. So we're putting additional information in that resource. So we have an extension. This is the pretty name of the extension. We have a property here called booking sync GUID. Now that's a custom property in the open extension, and that is the GUID of the bookable resource booking row in Dynamics. And we need that in the Outlook event so that we can match our bookings in Dynamics with events in Outlook and vice versa. So that's why we need to use open extensions. I guess we could put it somewhere in the existing properties as well, but then we'd sort of kind of ruin the purpose of those properties. So that's why I've created an open extension. So that event is now in my calendar. I've been booked, and the work orders, the bookings now there, as you can see. So what happens next? And there's like no magic in this one. This is fairly straightforward to do. The complexity is when we want to now change this booking and move this an hour or 2 hours or whatever into the future. That's where change notifications really kick in. And if we look at the bookable, before we do that, before we change this booking, let's look at the bookable resource booking row that was just created. I mentioned those two columns on it. So what happens is when I create a new booking in Outlook, Outlook creates, or in Dynamics, I get that booking created in Outlook. Now, what happens when a new event is created, a change notification is fired off, right? So every time I do something, a change notification is fired off. We very easily have an infinite loop here, very easily. So when that event is created, it has the GUID of the booking. So it actually runs a child flow that updates this booking with the ID of the Outlook event. And we need that so that we can match an event in Outlook with a booking in Dynamics. This is how we can keep them in sync. We now have the Dynamics GUID and GUID from Dynamics in that open extension, and we have that event ID here on the booking row so that we can match them together. And we also need a reference to the original the original resource. And we need this because if I was to change myself with John Doe, so if this booking changed over to John Doe from me, we would naturally need to delete this event in my calendar and then update this event with John Doe and create an event in John Doe's calendar. So we need a reference to the original resource that was the original resource of the booking. And again, we have to do that because we don't have pre-image in Power Automate. We're not able to get a pre-image. I could use a webhook for that, but that would be beside the point. I don't have a pre-image, so I need to store the previous resource here somewhere. Now, Rachit has a good question. The event IDs are generated by Dataverse. So the event IDs, this is actually the ID of the event in Outlook. So if I hop back to the flow where we created the Outlook event, this is the ID of that event that was created. The ID is right here, and we can see that it matches the value that we have here. So this is the Outlook resources ID. Now, let's change the booking next, because I'm also running out of time. It's almost time up. So let's change this from 9 to 9 to 11. That's fine. Let's change it from 9 to 11. So now the customer called and said, "Hey, can you push this event? Can you arrive later?" I said, "I'm running late. Can we push our meeting by an hour?" And I say, All right, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, that's fine. Let's, we can move that. We can move the appointment. So I've moved the appointment, and what happens is, let's try to open up the correct flow. What happens is a change notification is fired off. So Mr. UPS or Mrs. UPS driver arrives with a change notification, rings my doorbell, and says, here is your change notification for a event resource changed. So what's happening is this validation flow that I had is also used to process change notifications. So this flow fires off. It does some, background checks, client state matching, and these kinds of things, and it then runs through a short switch. If you're wondering why does he have a switch there, the reason for this is we can actually subscribe to different types of change notifications: updated, deleted, created. But ironically, for some reason, we have multiple fire offs in any case due to that internal update thingy that I was mentioning. So we don't really need to evaluate the type of change notification. We can just always run it on updated, because it's that's all we really need, and we can't avoid the fact that it's going to run multiple times. So what happens here is we have a condition that first checks whether this was about a deleted event, because maybe I didn't update the date, maybe I deleted it. Now if I deleted it, then I'd have a child flow that runs in Dynamics and looks at bookable resource bookings that hold a value for a deleted event, so that I can then cancel that booking or delete that booking in Dynamics. In this case, it was not a deleted event. So next thing is it's checking whether or not the event originated from Outlook or Dynamics. Events originating from Outlook are not supported, like we mentioned. So yes, this originated from Dynamics. So what it's going to do is it's going to run a child flow to now update the record in Dynamics, and then it's going to respond back to the parent flow. So if we look at Dynamics, what we should see here is, and let's actually briefly look at the calendar first. So it's 9/2/11. So if we look at the bookable resource booking, we should see 9/2/11 here, unless there's a new bug that we encountered. 9/2/11 right here. So the booking's been, the change in Outlook has now been reflected in Dynamics through change notifications. And really the last thing that I want to mention is, because we're short on time, the last thing that I want to mention is deleted events. And that was a bit tricky. And the reason for that is, and it's a valid scenario. If I, as a scheduler, delete a bookable resource booking, so the event it's not canceled, it's deleted. If I delete it, what we want to do is we want to get rid of that event in a user's calendar, right? I mean, it's just, otherwise there's a mismatch, data mismatch. The challenge with Power Automate, again, this is why pro code for this approach. The challenge with Power Automate is we can't get a pre-image. We can't get a pre-image with Power Automate. So what the way I've solved this is, and let's demo that by deleting this booking. The way I've solved this has been by, let's look at the correct flow. Here we go. The way I've solved this has been by registering a webhook. And this is immediately where it gets pro code, because I think that anytime when you have to visit the plugin registration tool, you're talking about a pro code experience. That's, I'm that black and white. So I've registered a webhook, and with that webhook, I'm able to get a pre-image. So I'm able to get all the data about that deleted bookable resource booking, and that bookable resource booking just happens to hold the event ID that we need so that we can delete something in Outlook. So with the pre-image, we can get the, where do we have it? Here we go. With the pre-image, we can get the event ID from the bookable resource booking row, and we can then find a matching record in Outlook or through Graph API in the event resource, and we can then delete the event. So that's how we can, that's kind of how we have to go around the fact that Power Automate doesn't have a pre-image. And when we look at my calendar, the event's gone. So that's really all I wanted to demo. There are definitely, more or could be more, the child flows and all these, how they work. It's a pretty broad topic, but I think this kind of, or hopefully gives you or gave you an understanding and an idea of how we can use change notifications to keep the Microsoft cloud and the Dynamics cloud in sync when it comes to bookings. So I'll look at the chat next. Let's see if there are any questions. Has Microsoft published any flow templates which we can use to jumpstart the learning of these APIs? The concept is quite powerful, but the flow definitions look quite big. For this, I don't think there is anything, because when we have to use the HTTP actions, or even the HTTP with Azure AD actions, they're always custom stuff in the sense that whenever you use these, you have to have your client secrets in place, and you always have to, when you do posts or patches, you always need to know the JSON that you're, that's needed to get that done. So I don't think there are any existing templates. This is something that you just kind of have to build from scratch. I've covered these in my in my blog in my blog. So I have 3 blog posts about exactly this that we just went through, with part 4 on deleting events coming out at some point. So yeah, I think that you do need to just kind of get started from scratch, and they are a lot of work. I don't know. I probably spent 15 or 20 days building this stuff. It, at least to me, is probably the most advanced concept that I've built.
So
all right.
Would you mind sharing your blog link into the chat window so that everyone can have access to that and follow you on blog?
Yes, definitely. So it is daytodaydynamics365.com, and let me put that in chat. Here we go. Yep.
Thank you. I can see someone is writing a question or maybe a comment. But it was a great demo, Andy, and thank you so much for this detailed topic. Definitely, that's something like I would really want to dig into this Graph API, and we'll try to find out how we can explore this one from finance and operations point of view now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How we can embed this one with finance and operations. So definitely, because most of the audience which we always get from finance and operations and Power Platform, but the products are actually streamlining now. There is no finance and operations in my idea. So you have to learn what's happening into Power Platform, what's happening into CE now, in order to streamline the processes. But that was a cool presentation in the demonstration.
Thank you.
With this one, I think so. I don't see any further questions. If anyone has any question, you have your last minute here. Please feel free to unmute yourself, and then we can let you speak. Otherwise,
yeah. And hi guys, Rachit here. I just want to say thanks to Ante for taking out his time, and it was really a great session and quite informative. So thank you for that, Ante, for sharing it.
Thanks for tuning in. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, Ante. Thank you so much for the session.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us today, and thank you so much, like Team Anti, for giving us this opportunity and coming on this platform. And we look forward to having you again and again with so much powerful sessions. Thank you. Thank you.